For the past few weeks, I've been rocking a OnePlus 8, and no, I won't lie to you, I did not put my SIM card in this one, but that's because I haven't left the house in a long time, so there's really no point. I have Wi-Fi, all it would do is tick off all my friends by becoming the green guy, but because I know this is nobody's favorite Android phone, I won't dwell too much on it and explain more as to why I don't think it should exist. However, it is still rather nice. Let's begin. So, just overall great specs with the OnePlus 8. There's little bells and whistles that I appreciated in the iPhone SE, for example, which had IP water resistance, it had wireless charging, but that's it. Those are most of my bells and whistles I wish this phone had. For $700 in 2020, it still feels bizarre that they didn't want to include wireless charging on the OnePlus 8, but they're willing to do it on the 8 Pro at $900. So, obviously, most people want to talk about the 8 Pro, I get that, but you also have to be able to get your hands on one because they've been out of stock for weeks now, and there's a few sites that are selling them at a little bit of an upcharge, so if you're willing to spend extra on the 8 Pro, you know, I guess you can, but this is the entry-level one, the one that you can still buy today, and outside of those bells and whistles I care about, everything is pretty great. I mean, the display is very, very rich in quality. I love the 90 Hz refresh rate. It's already making me depressed knowing that this year's iPhone is probably still going to be 60 Hz. It also has a very nice screen-to-body ratio. I mean, the camera hole is minor, it's a giant display. The design over it overall feels very premium. There's no cracks, there's no popping. Feels nice in the hand and surprisingly light. Maybe it's because I'm used to the stainless steel and glass on my 11 Pro Max, but whatever they did with the OnePlus 8, it's very, very easy to hold in the hand because despite having a display this large and this tall, by the way, in fact, I think I said the same thing with the S20 Ultra, Android phones are getting taller and taller, and I'm not okay with this aspect ratio. It's weird and it's just a little too tall. If they shrunk it down just a tad more, I think it would fit the OnePlus 8 like compact phone they were advertising this thing to be when I first watched the keynote. It's funny to watch a company explain how a 6.5-inch display is smaller and more comfortable to hold. Yeah, I got big hands and it's still hard to reach the top of this phone, and OnePlus still to this day does not have any kind of one-handed mode or reachability feature within settings, so you're gonna have to download that from a third party to be able to do it. But there are still some great optimization features for the OnePlus 8 when it comes to speed. You know, OnePlus is all about advertising how dang fast their phones are, and man, do I forget how fast the animations, how fast applications download, install, and open, and switching between a ton of different apps. I feel like I'm in hyperactive mode whenever I'm using this thing. I just feel like productivity master. I can open this app, split screen, multitask 2 apps at the same time, switching between the two, and the faster Wi-Fi speeds I noticed with the OnePlus 8 were pretty noticeable compared to the internet speeds I'm used to getting on my iPhone. You know in YouTube how you can set your playback speed to be like 1.5 to 2 times faster than reality? Whenever I'm using a OnePlus phone, it feels like I've set the animations and everything to 2x. In fact, almost a little too fast. Sometimes the animations feel like they're jumping out at me and trying to show off how fast they can be. It's not a negative, I'm still happy with the phone, but it's just something I notice, and I think OnePlus is good at that. If you're gonna have a shtick, if you're gonna have a gimmick or some type of thing your phone is known for, being the fastest one out there for launching apps, downloading, and just overall being a super powerful flagship, I think that's a good one. So at $700, you do get 128 gigs of storage internally, 8 gigs of RAM, which absolutely is much better than what the iPhones are offering this time of year, although just have to remember you're going to get way less software updates with this thing than you are with an iPhone. But the stereo speakers also sound really, really good. I watched a lot of video on this thing while I used it, and as I rarely switch over to an Android phone very regularly, I will admit there were a few instances where the split screen multitasking was somewhat helpful. Very rare and specific though, okay? Let me say this. The only time I found it super helpful was when I had a package out for delivery and I was waiting for it in the mail, so I would split screen between Discord and my security camera's footage so that I can see outside if the delivery man shows up and at the same time be chatting in the Discord. But every time the keyboard popped up, it would cover up the security camera, so not super useful, but it was one of those pro Android feature moments where I was like, okay, this is kind of nice. I can't do this on my iPhone. The charge rate, of course, does not disappoint with OnePlus speed as well. You can plug this thing in and charge it up insanely fast, so great phone to those of you who forget to charge your phone overnight. And the cameras with OnePlus phones have always felt a tiny bit lackluster, but the rear-facing camera, I have to say, for pictures and videos seems to be pretty good, pretty impressive. I think all flagship phones that come out these days take great enough photos photos for what we need them for. The front-facing camera always appears to be a little washed out to me, so low light performance is not great with the OnePlus phones. And yeah, I'm also not on board with this macro camera trend. I don't know why smartphone companies think it's fun to put like this super pixelated 2-megapixel camera just for those super up-close shots, and even after you take them, they don't look that good. I think I would have preferred a telephoto. In fact, I think the OnePlus 7T has a telephoto as well, so I wish they could have stuck with that, but who knows, this probably saves them money. The ultra-wide camera is a little bit softer to be expected, but video, you know, obviously not iPhone levels of video performance, but still good enough for what you need on a phone. And the preview on the camera app always looks much worse than the actual photos. Whenever I'm trying to take a picture, I'm like, this looks kind of weird. I take the photo, and I think Android and OnePlus in general are just known for their post-process rendering, so after you take the picture and look at it, it looks way more crisp and way more detailed, so I'm happy with the camera. For a $700 Android, you know, it doesn't really compare with the Pixel or the iPhone, but at least it knows what it is. It's not trying to have some kind of show-off feature that is ridiculous and not even practical. Looking at you, S20 Ultra. And the biometrics have been fairly reliable for me as well. It always feels a bit weird when that ultrasonic fingerprint reader has to light up the screen in order to register your fingerprint, but it works and unlocks very quickly for me, as well as Face Unlock, which is less secure, but at the same time seems to unlock insanely fast for me. So even if I don't feel like using the fingerprint reader, I can still unlock the phone very quickly, though it doesn't work as well in darker environments, which is why, again, Face ID is still better than both of these biometrics to me because you get the best of both, but still very little to complain about with this phone. But the bigger issue that prevents me from recommending it is OnePlus. You make too many dang phones each year. I mean, what are the reasons, honestly, to go with a OnePlus 8 over something like the OnePlus 7T, which you can find elsewhere for like under 600 bucks, probably some places on sale you can get around 500 bucks or less. There's very few reasons to go with this over that phone that's not even a year old. They released that like 6-7 months ago, and it's got the triple camera system, it's got a 90 hertz display, it's got the Snapdragon 855 Plus, so I guess the reason you would go with a OnePlus 8 is because you really care about having the latest Snapdragon, so this has the 865, and yes, it is really fast. In fact, you can play games at 90 FPS like Fortnite, which I get we all cringe over, but at the same time, it's a very popular game, and not a lot of other Android phones can play a mainstream title like that at that high a frame rate, and that is, sadly, at this point, only possible with the Snapdragon 865, not the 855 Plus. And another advantage you get with the OnePlus 8 is 5G support, which, you know, 5G is not really there yet, so there's very little reasons to spend the extra money on this thing unless you just really, really like that asymmetrical camera hole, and you don't really like that old OnePlus 7T notch, which personally I was fine with. I like the look of that notch. In fact, I'm actually still a fan of the camera hole being centered instead of off to the side, because it just makes third-party apps look weird when, especially, we display all of our content and widgets in the top bar off to the edges and we don't put anything in the middle. It just feels odd to have the camera hole in the way all the time, whereas on the Samsung phones they center it and there's more equal spacing. But personal preference thing. The running issue we're gonna find with upcoming Android phones is that so many of them look so dang similar. I mean, how many phones have we seen now that have, okay, there's a bit of an edge display, there's a camera cutout either in the center or off to the side, and fairly thin bezels all the way around. You know, usually the chin is a tad thicker than the forehead, but at the end of the day, there's so many phones coming out these days that look just like this, and finding the features to differentiate them when they're all using Snapdragon chips is gonna get harder and harder. So the good news is OnePlus, as they normally do, did price this really well, so it's competitive compared to other Android phones on the market for what you can get for 700 bucks. But at the same time, OnePlus might be their own worst enemy because of how cheap they've made previous generation phones, and they're gonna have a harder time coming up with things to add 2 times a year. So OnePlus, if you want my advice, I would scrap the T series of phones, because I don't know what you're gonna do for the OnePlus 8T or OnePlus 8T Pro other than add some type of slightly beefed up Snapdragon chip, but no one's really complaining about that. What are you gonna do with the OnePlus 9 now? Are you gonna add 120 hertz to both models, wireless charging to both models? Actually, I would appreciate that. Please do it. But yeah, honestly, after using the software again, which I feel like is much more compatible with Google's software than Samsung is, which anytime I use a Samsung phone, it feels like the apps are competing with each other. Open me, no open me, no open me. It's like parents fighting and you have to choose between the two, whereas OnePlus is much more compatible with just, hey, we use Google, use your Google apps. Although there are a few bloatware apps that they put on here that you can't uninstall. Like, why did they pre-install Netflix and also not let you uninstall it? I don't have Netflix anymore because we're just trying to cut down on subscriptions, and I'm trying to get rid of this app and it won't let me get rid of it. So I'm sure there's some, you know, specific Android way of getting rid of it, but they're not making it easy for me. And either way though, it's not that big of a deal, and I enjoy using OnePlus's software. And after using this phone and knowing all the things they've added with the OnePlus 8 Pro, I can confidently say if I had to use an Android phone, I would absolutely choose the OnePlus 8 Pro. I would love to pick one up from OnePlus at some point as soon as they become available, but Mint Mobile, who is not a sponsor, don't worry, they just sent me this one as a gift. They didn't ask me to talk about them. I just want you guys to know I didn't spend any of my own money on this thing, so I get to keep it and experience Android long term. And I could have done that with the Pixels when those were sent to me for free, but those phones sucked and I hated them. So I hate this phone a lot less. In fact, I enjoy using this phone other than the few times where I put it on a wireless charger and I'm like, oh yeah. But other than that, it's very fun to use. The display is excellent, the cameras are pretty good, and having lots of storage and an entry-level price point is awesome. So it's a solid phone. I just have a hard time understanding why you would go with this instead of a OnePlus 7T for hundreds of dollars cheaper. And if you're willing to spend $700 on a OnePlus 8, go ahead and just opt for the Pro, because that phone is so much better. You get 120 hertz, the super fast wireless charging, and the slightly larger display. This is only 0.2 inches smaller than the 8 Pro, so there's very little differences there. I don't know, what do you guys think? Is OnePlus making too many phones a year? Feel free to hit me up over on Twitter, join my Discord, we can chat more about it there. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.